we've seen, subsea cables, like all infrastructure, are prone to outages. And so there's that sensitivity about being able to provision new capacity as quickly as possible simply because a cable broke. But the emerging opportunity that I'm really excited about is this, of course, you ready for it? The AI opportunity. Had to say it, right?
Yeah.
Welcome to Bits, Bytes, and Beyond, the podcast that takes you beyond the buzzwords and deep into the real-world challenges of moving your data. I'm Trent Blakely, Head of Product Marketing at PCCW Global Console Connect. In each episode, we'll unpack a specific technical subject, break down what's really going on, and explore how to solve it. Whether you're a CIO, a network engineer, or simply the person who always gets asked, is it the network? Then you're in the right place. This isn't thought leadership, it's technical leadership. Now let's get into it.
Today my guest is our illustrious CTO, Paul Gampe. Paul, you're dialing in from Australia, from Brisbane today, right?
I am. It's great to be back in my hometown for a little while.
Excellent. I know you're constantly on planes, aren't you?
Has been quite a lot of travel. I'm on the board for Amplify, so attending their board meetings, and most recently their Global Network as a Service event. Gives me a good opportunity to see what all the industry's up to.
Yeah, excellent. That's a perfect segue actually to the topic of our podcast today, which is some tech predictions for next year. And so, yeah, I mean, you always have to be ready to discuss any topic, I think, but from what I understand, some of these are very near and dear to your heart, and some of these are kind of very new, very nascent ideas that may come to fruition next year. So the first one I have on my list has to do with how NaaS, Network as a Service, is becoming more and more prominent. And a lot of the analysts seem to think that it's poised for some serious growth over the next few years. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think having been to this Global Network as a Service event by Amplify for maybe my third year now, maybe fourth, really starting to see the dialogue around, what's the value proposition, moving from it's a great idea, it's something we should do, to it's table stakes to retain the enterprise connectivity landscape. We've always had the dream or belief that more and more production workloads are going to move to the cloud. And as we continue to see that, double-digit growth of Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Alibaba, Tencent, and others, that the connectivity naturally follows. So it's a great slide, actually, that Pascal, the CTO of Amplify, presented. Network as a Service is the toll booth of connectivity to cloud. And so because it's become so core to the economic engine of network providers, Network as a Service is now core to their thinking, and certainly core to the Global Network event.
I love that analogy of being a toll booth. It's
Yeah.
very interesting. Okay. That's fascinating. I mean, some analysts are predicting, up to 29% CAGR, and that the market could reach as high as 230 billion by the end of 2034. And that's, there's a pretty broad consensus, but still consensus amongst the analysts about growth patterns increasing. And I think one of the other interesting points that I've seen is that only just over 50% of network providers claim that they're API ready for this growth, but over 90% recognize that strategic importance. So they know it's going to be important, but still there's quite a bit of lag between that and being actually ready for it.
And I think the thing that I would want our audience to understand is that we're beginning to see some clarity emerge amongst all the different stacks and standards organizations about what role they play in this network as a service. Because if you're a mobile network operator, or you're a fixed line operator, or you're a cloud connectivity operator, each of those different use cases, they've got different standards bodies. So what I've seen emerge over the last 12 months is clarity around GSMA and CAMARA, programming the radio access network. They've got some really solid use cases, some of which we'll see at MWC coming up in the early half of next year. Then throughout the course of the last 12 months, Amplify and TM Forum have met many times at their senior level to collaborate and get clear lanes about where each standards body is going to continue to develop and add value to the industry. What's emerged is that the Amplify Lifecycle Orchestration Sonata API has become the clear provider of east-west connectivity. And as you probably already know, Trent, because I think you interviewed one of our colleagues from EU Networks, the Console Connect platform and EU Networks is actually fully integrated and can program each other using the Amplify LSO API. So it's a in production proof point that this is the leading light of east-west integration between network service providers, and then TM Forum doing the north-south, integrating your OSS and your BSS and the more of that vendor-provided infrastructure. So that sense of clarity, I think, really benefits the industry, knowing where to go to what standards organization, what standard I need to implement, depending on what market we're serving.
That's amazing. No, and I think that clarity is so important. Just getting on the same page, it seems like we spend a lot of time just that, but also, yeah, what you said about real world application, getting into these network integrations to make it actually happen. I think for too long it's been theory only. So, but yeah, that model with us and EU networks is very exciting, and one that we'd like to replicate. I think many times over.
Mm. And we've made some really good progress with digital realty throughout the year as well,
That's right.
integrating with digital realty service fabric. So, true east-west, same API, low cost of investment, high return and value to the enterprise. I think it really proves the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you bring up another point about like the direction of the traffic and the scope or breadth of, does it leave a building or, that's something we're going to touch on a bit later. But next, I wanted us to shift gears just slightly towards this concept of transmission on demand. So layer one that can happen in a very automated and software-like manner. Is that something that you think is coming?
It's been on our radar for a couple of years. As a company, we're now fully committed to making this a reality. And I think it's why PCCW Global Console Connect has a right to win here is that PCCW Global has a really strong brand and a great deal of trust in the subsea cable community through long-running partnerships, managing subsea cable or being a consortium member, and being a trusted partner for the serious infrastructure that represents. Coupled with the innovation that we've been able to achieve the friction we've taken out of procurement and provisioning, a quote to cash cycle that our Console Connect customers have come to understand as log in, click a button, automatically provision. Bringing those two assets together where we've got a long-term history of success with an innovative capability that adds value is one of the things that really excites me about 2026. We've seen, subsea cables, like all infrastructure, are prone to outages. And so there's that sensitivity about being able to provision new capacity as quickly as possible simply because a cable broke. But the emerging opportunity that I'm really excited about is this, of course, you ready for it? The AI opportunity. Had to say it, right?
Yeah, we have to.
The ability to either transfer training sets so that you can begin training language models in a federated learning model, or simply to get data synchronized between different cloud providers. The ability to get deterministic connectivity where there is no jitter, there is no latency or congestion as you're likely to encounter in a packet switch network. That deterministic nature of a transmission product, I think, has an entirely new evolving use case in AI connectivity. So couldn't be at a better point in time to be doing something like this.
Yeah, no, it's a very exciting space to be in. You see technologies like NVIDIA's Spectrum X, ROCE, which if I remember correctly, is RDMA over Converged Ethernet. Is that what that stands for?
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
And then, and Meta even, they have their rail only architecture that's, addressing this, especially on the LAN side, right? The other
Mm.
thing I want us to touch on at least is the idea that most of AI networking seems to center on the LAN, right? What happens inside the building. But more and more, especially with the prevalence of multiple models being incorporated in a single workflow or in a single even um, transaction or a single, what's the right word I'm looking for? A single workload. It requires the WAN to be addressed at this same intensity and scale.
Yeah, and I think if we look at the amplifier's opportunity to program east-west, it's purely servicing the wide area network. And if we follow the history of software-defined networking, a lot of that core innovation began with OpenFlow and Dan Pitt and Stanford. Look to address the LAN problem, and now we see the WAN problem being the next point of innovation around standards emerging. So, following that same path, we would anticipate the same thing to be happening right now. Obviously, solving the LAN problem for AI connectivity, RDMA over converged Ethernet is an obvious example. But where's the innovation happening for the wide area network? And I think it is going to be Amplify that'll play that role. They've already started work on a payload for the LSO Sonata API for transmission. So we're already starting to see them collaborating with Lumen and others who've identified this opportunity of data center to data center connectivity at 400, 800, 1.2 terabit capacity
Hmm.
to synchronize language models. And so you're right. I think is where it's going to go. And I think us as a company are in a good place to be part of that next wave.
Agreed. Okay. Thank you for your comments on that. I guess we're running short on time, so last but not least, we have Model Context Protocol, MCP.
Mm.
It has been all the rage all over the internet, I think. And it's quite frankly, it's been very needed. I think since Anthropic was the one that kind of came out with this in November of 2024. It's evolved and matured over time. I'm sure you probably have opinions and comments on where we are today in terms of the evolution of MCP.
Yeah. And so I love the pace of innovation. You really feel like we're back at the early stage of some wave, right?
Hmm.
And so a few weeks ago, when I was getting ready to present a keynote at the Amplify Global Network as a Service event, I anticipated everybody would be talking about AI, right? It's driving demand, driving supply. And I thought, well, is anybody actually going to be demonstrating AI? So worked with some of our engineers and said, hey, if the Amplify LSO payloads and API documentation is good enough, then it should be relatively straightforward for us to be able to produce an MCP server that can consume the quality of that documentation. So let's see if it's true. Let's prove whether it's true or not. And I spent more time editing the video than it took the developers to actually produce the MCP server. And we demonstrated on stage,
That's
literally a chat. We used Anthropic, and you'll see a chat. I'm sure you can share your
yeah. We'll share a
podcast
link
here
to
as the
that
link.
in the notes.
Yeah. And chatting with the Console Connect API via an MCP server using the LSO standard, saying, "Give me all the data centers in Singapore." Using the address validation API endpoint. Give me a quote for a 10 gig port at this data center in Equinix in Singapore. Get quote API, and then place an order. Literally order, and then log into console and see the port active. All of
Whoa.
it done. It was amazing.
I'm so sad that I missed that. I'm sure there's video somewhere where I could actually watch that take place.
It's very poorly edited, and you can blame me for that.
All good. No, it's still very impressive, and I think that that really speaks to the level of maturity that this protocol
Mm.
is reaching. I think there's definitely still some skepticism in the market about, how real is it? I think, like you're saying, the developer tooling is very solid. But
Mm.
what do you see as far as adoption of the MCP, like from an enterprise perspective, over the next, 2, 3, 4 years, maybe?
I think if we go from this agentic world where you have a relationship with some chatbot or a language model to inform your context, the natural next step is robotic process automation. So I've used the LLM to establish context, and now I want to perform an action. And so MCP takes that friction out of connecting the agent to the activity, and good quality API documentation, well-structured API, clear payloads are the ideal input to MCP. So I can't see there being a more obvious roadmap for its adoption than the current use cases we see inside our enterprise and I see inside my peers' enterprises. So
That's
I think
awesome.
it's practically inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Mm,
it's just a matter of time, really, I think. And I wanted to say the importance of standardization and documentation. I think
mm,
you are a flag carrying champion for that all over the world. And it's just so important, especially for this
mm,
use case of, in order for AI to really, or in any agent to take advantage of the capabilities, they need to be documented. Clearly, they need to
mm.
be at least somewhat standardized and recognized in order to be fully leveraged. So
And I think you and I talked about on an earlier podcast about the fact that Console Connect PCCW Global made our LSO API adapter open source.
that's
So
right.
naturally, what better input could you give to building an MCP server than an
Yeah.
actual reference implementation of the API?
Mhm. That's been proven to be a very useful piece of software that we've made open source. And so I'd
Yeah.
love to be a part of that. All
Yeah.
right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up. Thank you again for your time, Paul. Any last words or comments around next year's tech predictions?
Happy 2026. I think it's going to be a great year.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Paul. Take care.
Peace. Bye bye.
Bye bye.